Hey, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater, and we're going to have some fun today. We're actually going to do a listening session where we listen to a piece of music and kind of dissect it and work our way through it. And I'm here with Israel Foster,
yes, sir.
One of the sales engineers from,
yes, sir.
From here at Sweetwater.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how long have you been here?
8 years.
8 years,
8
wow.
years. Yes,
wow,
sir.
That's awesome. So you've seen it grow.
Oh, quite a bit, quite a bit. It was very small when I was here, and about 3 times as big as it is now.
Wow, so. In 8 years, that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, it's awesome to have you here, and thanks for taking time out to come down and do this with me.
My pleasure.
We're gonna have some fun, man.
I think so too.
So you're probably familiar. I mean, I've seen these where you can like get bootlegs of multi-tracks of famous songs and things and download them. If you know somebody or whatever, you can come across them. Well, there's a service now called Mix the Music.
Okay.
That has a website, and I've got it up here. And they're working with the record companies to get you legal multi-track copies of all these songs in every genre, all kinds of artists. I mean, you can see we've got everything there from Johnny Cash to Bob Marley to, I think, Robert Palmer's down there somewhere. There's metal stuff, there's country stuff, there's jazz stuff, blues. So all these different genres you can browse by genre. You can browse by artist. Work through all the different choices and things. You can browse by album. So the cool thing is these are legal versions of the songs.
Okay.
So let's look at one here on the site. So if we want to look at this one, I don't even know what it was. Somebody told me by the Killers. So when you purchase this song, you get a download that includes the tracks or stems. And in this case, we've got the drums kind of split out. We've got bass, we've got guitars, synths, strings, vocals, background vocals, and a lot of them are stems, so they have the processing and things in them.
Oh, built in. Okay.
But the idea is when you buy it, you get a file. You get a dot multi-track file.
Okay.
And PreSonus Studio One can open that file, and then it spreads it out onto your mixer, so you can access those individual tracks. You can solo them, mute them. You can remix if you want. So it's a really cool system for being able to, first of all, learn about engineering and mixing and everything, because you can hear all the tracks, right?
Yeah.
You can go in. The thing that you really can't do when you buy an album is, what did that kick drum sound like, or what did that vocal really sound like?
That's something I always wanted to do when I started out almost 20 years ago. Is I wonder what they did to this, and now that there's a service, that's huge. So many people are going to learn so much quicker than just sort of doing it on their own. Now you can see what the pros do and sort of dissect the mix.
Yeah, plus you can go in and you can remix it yourself. You could put your own plugins on it if you want to. You could take the vocal out and sing your own vocal or your own guitar solo, or even just learn the parts, right? Because if you really want to hear a guitar solo, take everything out and just hear the guitar solo exactly the way it was played. So there's a lot of cool features in this Mix the Music platform. And again, partnered with PreSonus, you can do all that in Studio One. And in fact, you get a free version of Studio One when you sign up for an account. So if you don't have Studio One, you can still get started. So you're kind of ready to go. So what we've done is we've randomly selected a song. We just kind of went up there and I bought a song and downloaded it to my laptop here and loaded it into Studio One. And the song is When the Curtain Falls by Greta Van Fleet.
Okay.
Which, do you know that song?
I do not familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm not either. I know the band. I mean, I know of the band,
Same
but I hadn't heard that song. It's actually off their first full-length album, came out in late 2018.
Okay.
And you may know this, we carry Acme Audio preamps and rec boxes and things, and Al Sutton, who's the man behind that, has Rust Belt Studios up in Detroit, and he's one of the guys who worked on producing and engineering.
Oh, wow, okay.
And tracking this, so that's kind of a cool connection on this song.
That is.
But, so I thought what we'd do is, we'll play the song, listen back to it, and we can talk about it a little bit, and then we can solo the tracks and talk about some of that. And I know you've got a huge engineering background and mastering and mixing background, and so it'll be fun to kind of talk about what's going on here.
Let's do it.
Right on. All right, so let's play it.
Yeah!
That was incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty interesting, right?
It really is.
Right. I mean, obviously there's a pretty strong Zeppelin kind of
influence
there, which of course is people talk about that a lot with Greta Van Fleet.
Absolutely.
But I hear some other stuff in there too.
Yeah, what I've really heard and noticed first was the vocals. The lead vocals, it's distorted, but not distorted. It's more of a harmonic saturation than just sort of fuzz or distortion. The fact that normally when you do that to a vocal, it can sound really harsh and really brittle if you don't know what you're doing. So clearly whoever mixed that vocal knew how to tame it, and I'm almost certain it's some sort of parallel processing instead of just slapping it directly on to the vocal, because you don't have a dry wet when you put it on an insert. So drums sound really powerful and explosive. I'm sure there's parallel compression there. I love the bass tone. Everything about the record. What I would say overall is, because I've been doing this for so long, fitting that amount of energy into a song without making anything overbearing is really difficult to do.
Right.
So, and even seeing here, looking at the waves, it seems like they're doing a lot of automation, sort of bringing levels up, bringing levels down, so your ear doesn't get overwhelmed by anything. Really impressive.
Right.
Really impressive.
So yeah, they're actually a three-piece band. It's three brothers on vocals, guitar, and bass, and then a drummer, and they're all really young guys. But obviously they're bringing in some little things there, some little ear candy to make it bigger as well.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the amount of ambience that's in the track. I'm curious to listen to the individual tracks.
I am too.
Hear where the ambience is coming in, because I agree with you. It's hitting really hard and there's a lot of energy, but it doesn't sound super squashed to me. Now these are the individual tracks. It's not the master.
Right.
Version, but still, it doesn't sound really heavily compressed. There's a lot of dynamics there.
I agree, and that is one of my early mistakes as an early engineer. Was if I wanted energy, I would just compress.
Right.
And then you get the energy, but you don't get the dynamics. You don't get the emotion out of it, because your dynamics is obviously squashing it. Incredible job capturing that stuff. It's obviously a lot of compression going on, but very tasteful and very pro, I would say. Sounds great.
Al Sutton tracked it and mixed it. I did just a little bit of research about who did what. I didn't really look into the song too much because I wanted to have fresh ears when we listened to it. But Al worked with Kid Rock and has done a lot of the Detroit stuff up there. So he's not unfamiliar with those big sounds. Like you said. The interesting thing now, getting this from Mix the Music, is that we have these stems. So we've got kick drum, snare drum, a stereo drum mix, percussion, bass, 3 guitar tracks, and then 2 vocal tracks. And if you load those into to Studio One, if you open up that .multitrack file, put all of your faders basically at 0, you get the same mix as basically you would have heard in the studio when they were doing it. So they've just exported those stems, and then you can load those back in. So the cool thing is that we can go back, we can rewind this, we can solo, for example, the kick drum, hit play. So I love that you can hear the count off.
Yeah, exactly.
There's clearly bleed there.
It really is, and I think what you said earlier, how did they get the ambience? That had to have been intentional, because the first thing as an engineer is, let's get a gate. Let's get all of the noise out so it's just crystal clear. But it sounds like they intentionally left that in there to add to the overall vibe of the song, which is pretty cool. Right,
yeah, there's a lot of bleed there, and I bet if we go over to the snare drum, we'll turn off the kick.
Yep, no gate.
No gate. Big reverb.
Yeah, big reverb.
But it's a big room reverb. It's not like the 80s,
Phil
Collins snare or whatever, which is cool. I mean, that's fine. But
it is.
For this type of a track, probably not the right thing.
I agree.
I wonder, too, I bet, listening to the count off there at the beginning, I bet they tracked the guitar, bass, drums live.
Yeah.
And I wonder.
I would agree.
I wonder if the vocal was done live at the same time or if it was overdubbed. Let's go back and listen to the vocal and just hear if there's a bleed in that as well.
Camera lights in action, and words you know so well.
Okay, so no bleed. To capture that sort of energy, you have to record the band all at once. So I'm almost positive that they did a scratch track with the band. So he has too much energy for him to be solo in a room just to sing that. It sounds like they all were there. Maybe he went back to do it later, but it really does sound incredible. And I noticed that they're not using a lot of longer reverbs. It's more short reverbs, more echoes, delay. Typically with a song more ballad or slower, reverbs make sense. But if you tend to use reverbs in this sort of situation, it can drown out everything. So even on the vocal, if you play it back, there's a little reverb, but it's mainly the delay or echo that's really bringing the vibe.
It sounds pretty wet to me, though.
Yeah,
But you don't hear that when it's in the context
in the
of the whole mix.
Yeah.
So look, I'll play it here with just the soloed vocal.
Out of hell. When the curtain falls.
There's quite a bit.
It is, but it gets out of the way pretty quick.
Yep. So now, having heard it, when I listen back to the track, I can hear that ambience and those delays in there. But you really don't when you just listen to the track. It's just kind of part of the whole thing. So the same thing with the snare, if you listen to the ambience on that.
Now the ear catches it just because I've heard it before soloed. But that's the sort of thing as an engineer to learn that. To hear those things, because I know one of my first mistakes when I started engineering, I would do all of the mixing soloed. And then when you put it in the track, it doesn't sound the same. So, and it sounds like they've done a combination of both, let's zero in on the tone I want, but less in the context of a mix, I don't want it to be overbearing, which is only something you can do after having stems and access to stems like this, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, right. So I'm curious, one reverb I really am hearing is on the, I guess you'd say the rhythm guitar part, or the primary guitar part. Let's rewind a little bit here. And I want to solo that. I'm assuming it's guitar 1. So we're socially distanced here. So I'm hearing a little bit more on one side, and you're probably hearing a little more on the other. But from where I'm sitting, it kind of sounds like they did the Van Halen thing, where the dry guitar is over here and the ambience and stuff is over on this side.
Which is a really cool technique because it allows for, again, the ears to sort of perceive everything as one, but also space it out to where everything is not coming from the same source. So, and that's also something that, again, as an engineer, if you put the reverb on a send, then you could pan that independently of the whatever you had, the source, in this case the guitar.
Right.
Again, that is really cool that you can hear that stuff and solo it. That's
right.
That is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of engineers have access to this, but only through their own music. What I love about this is that this may be a genre that I'm unfamiliar with mixing, because different genres have different techniques.
Sure.
And, I'm more of a hip hop R&B guy, but it's like, let me see what the rock guys are doing. Wow, I never would have thought of that. So this is a really cool service.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. I think probably what they did is they had the dry guitar, they panned it to one side, and they had a send from that track that was going into a mono reverb probably. Or maybe bringing both sides back and panning them more to one side and then bring it all over. And it gives you that sense of space, but it doesn't clutter the mix up.
The mix, yeah.
So given that it's basically a three-piece instrumentally, it gives you that width.
Absolutely.
And not end up with kind of a mono kind of a track.
I find it really funny that if you listen to this song, it doesn't feel like three guys.
No.
It really feels like this big band, but it's literally just guitar, bass, and drums, and vocals, obviously. But it feels a lot bigger than what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The other part about this, when you listen to, let's listen to the whole mix.
Sure.
Just a little bit again. So what I was listening to there is the way they've kind of layered everything together and given it its own space.
Yeah.
And especially in the frequency spectrum.
Absolutely.
So if we listen back to just the guitar, if I go back to that primary guitar part. So both the way he's playing, where he's voicing things,
Mm-hmm.
and the arrangement and the tone, there's not a ton of bottom end there.
No, not at all.
And so there's room then when we solo the bass for that bass.
To really take over that spectrum.
Right.
And again, that's only something you can really get when you mix the tracks together, and really EQ in the whole mixing context of that. So yeah, it really is incredible. They did a phenomenal job with this. Really phenomenal.
I'm curious, given exactly what you were talking about, let's listen to the kick drum and the bass together.
Yeah.
Because that's always a difficult thing, right? To
It
get
is.
those two to both be prominent.
Yeah.
So to my ear, they've really shaped that kick drum to give the bass a spot
where
to
it
get
needs
through.
to be. And also another technique that I noticed on the bass, there's just a hair of distortion on the top, just so your ear has something to sort of catch almost. Yeah, really, really great job. I'm almost surprised that, I mean, I don't know, but it doesn't sound like they use side chaining. That's what I would normally do. So, have the bass, whenever the kick drum hit, the bass goes down, so sort of give it a space.
Right.
But they did a really good job. It's almost cheating doing that. This is the way you should do it, is EQ, but it really is hard to do that and without anything sounding thin or out of place. So, yeah, phenomenal job.
Right.
Phenomenal job.
Right. Probably more of a, lack of a better way to say it, more of a 70s kind of an approach.
Yeah,
of not trying to make the kick drum sound like an 808. You know what I mean? And then trying to fit the bass above it. They're kind of, this kick, to my ears in a way, is kind of compact.
It is.
It's not a huge boomy kick drum, and
Yep.
that does
Gets out
let
of
the
the way.
bass carry it more, which is more of a 70s production approach.
It is.
But it works for this, because that's kind of the sound of the band.
Absolutely, and even as far as the way they tune the kick, that has a lot to do with it as
Yep.
well, because if you're not tuning it correctly, then it's just going to be this flabby sort of get in the way sort of thing. So everything they did was really, really great. You can hear that in the mix.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So it looks like a couple of interesting tracks here. One thing I want to listen to is, we'll unsolo these. I'm curious about the stereo drums, what they have going on
Oh,
there. Now, I bet that wasn't just a pair of microphones. There's probably overheads of some kind,
Yep.
room mics, and maybe individual drum mics that are...
I think so as well. I was wondering that, and there's too much information for it just to be a pair of overheads. That sound is incredible.
Yeah.
That's really, really good. So it is the stem, so you're not going to get all of the individual tracks, but the fact that you can still hear, you can clearly hear there's some sort of compression going on, maybe on the room mic, and then they're putting the overheads over top and doing some EQ, but yeah, it sounds really great. All of those individual stems sound really great on their own.
Right.
As well.
So let's go ahead and turn on the kick and the snare stems and listen to the whole kit. Yeah, it gets bigger.
Yeah,
doesn't
it does.
Which means that they got the mics in phase. Everything's reinforcing, and it doesn't sound really EQ'd to me.
It doesn't. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of the drum sound, at least what I've learned, is making sure the phase is right. If the phase isn't right, nothing's going to work, because everything is just out of phase.
Right.
You lose that punch, and like you said, everything is in phase, which goes back to the basic recording as well. So yeah, really, really great drum sound.
Yeah,
Really great
definitely.
drum sound.
So there's a track here labeled percussion. I didn't hear a whole lot of percussion, so let's
didn't
just
either.
see what was going on there. It looks like it kind of comes in and out. It looks like it comes in, where are we at? Comes in about here.
Camera lights in action.
Oh wow, okay.
So just some shaker adding.
Just a little rhythm.
propulsion.
Yeah, exactly. It's really low in the mix, but
So that's the kind of thing where you wonder. So let's listen to. I've just got the drums soloed here along with the percussion. Yeah, it's really low in the mix.
it really is.
There you can hear it.
Yeah. It's a little harder hearing it in this context because the hi-hats are doing the same rhythm and they share the same space. I wouldn't have chosen to add that. I wonder why. Maybe I don't know. I don't know why they added that.
Yeah, they're bringing it in during the verse, the chorus, and then it comes in at the end of the second verse and for the second chorus. Looks like that's about the only times when it's actually in the mix that I can see here. So I guess they're just emphasizing a little bit. But I agree with you. I'm not really hearing it with just the drums.
Just the drums, yeah.
Soloed. So interesting. One of those little ear candy things, I guess.
Yep.
And then down here, we've got another guitar track. I don't know if that's doubling. So that's not really doubling. Let's bring in the other guitar track. So during the verse, the second, comes in, it looks like about a quarter of the way through the verse. I guess it's just adding that almost an octave above.
Yeah, yep. A little syncopation, sort of going back and forth, but yeah, great choice as well. Mm-hmm. Great choice as well.
But now it looks like it gets a little bigger here. I'm going to turn off the other track.
Oh, the leads, okay.
So a little fills there during the chorus. Mm-hmm. I would never make them that wet. Personally, I would not. But let's listen to it in the mix and see if it sounds that way in the context of the whole mix. So here's what I hear. I hear that reverb not so much as a big ambience as it making that sound drop back a notch.
Yeah, further back in the mix. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's adding depth to the, and it soloed, it sounds like it's this huge thing. However, when you put the vocals in, that sort of gives it that front to back almost.
Right.
Normally with leads you don't put that much reverb on it, but now I see why. It just helps it sit behind the vocal.
Right.
Which is really important with mixing, is to make sure the vocal is the star of the show at all times. So I'm wondering maybe that's why they chose to do that,
I bet
just
you're right.
to make sure that.
Yeah, I bet so.
Hey, here's a lead, which is, the star of the show, but we still have this vocalist that's to be the front man. Sounds really great.
Yeah, kind of interesting. When you hear those kinds of things soloed, and you were talking about this earlier, if you just soloed that and worked on it, kind of doesn't sound great.
Nope.
But then you get it in context, and all of a sudden it works really well. So that's kind of interesting. Now there's another guitar track here that only comes in during that kind of bridge where it's not really a breakdown, but it's kind of a softer part.
Oh, okay.
Can I say you got it all?
So I'm curious. It's almost like a pad, isn't it?
I was going to say, it sounds exactly like maybe they ran the guitar through a synth pedal or something like that, maybe to get that, because you can almost hear like this ethereal pad, sort of string-like quality to it. Sounds pretty good.
I wonder if it's the same track as the main guitar.
Yep.
I bet it is going to an effect.
Yep, that's what it, and you would never be able to know that if you didn't have the stems, because we can clearly see that the top stem is affecting the bottom stem. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, pretty interesting. And then we do have an actual guitar solo without the vocal. Let's hear a little bit of that. Guitar 3 here. So that's pretty wet too.
Yeah, it is.
Did it sound to you like there was an edit in the middle of that?
I didn't hear it.
So.
Oh, yep. Yep.
So I think there might have been maybe not an edit, but maybe a comp where they took two sections there and kind of pasted them together. But once again, all that ambience, I think, if we go back here, I bet it sits about right in the mix.
Yep. Really good job. Really good job.
Guy's got some range, doesn't he?
Yeah, it does.
Boy, that is a long tail.
It is. It is. And it's funny because the stems, that's also another trick that engineers do all the time is put a little phase or a little flange on just the reverb, and you can clearly hear it there. Again, just another technique that I picked up, 10 years into it to know, I can affect my send differently than the actual source. And this is a clear example of that flange or phase or something just on the reverb. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I want to hear that again because I think you're right. I don't think it's on the dry vocal. No, you're absolutely right.
And you sort of hear that. It's a phase, flange, some sort of time bass effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you're right. I bet it's a flanger. It's a flanger. That's pretty interesting. Now there is a vocal double as well. So we've got the main vocal. It's just during the choruses. It looks like. Here's the. Oops, sorry. There we go. Here's the main vocal.
Okay.
When the curtain falls, walk the hollows,
That's the double.
what's a valley?
So I'm kind of curious what that's adding. So if we solo, let's solo the main vocal, and then I'll bring in the double.
Yep.
Back here just a little bit. There we go.
When the curtain falls, walk the hollows, babe, what's a valley?
That's without.
Doll?
With.
Now you're not at all. No.
Not really hearing too much.
A little bit thicker in the low mids maybe.
But nothing that would be game changing. But it just adds, almost like the shaker track. It just adds a little bit more.
It's pretty dark
It is.
When the curtain falls,
and much drier.
Yep.
walk the hollows, babe, what's a valley doll? Now you're not at all.
Yeah, it does kind of lift that vocal up a little bit and make it a little beefier, especially since he's so high up in the range up there. That's pretty interesting.
It is. It's. I find it really interesting that it's just a lead track. It doesn't sound like there's any backing tracks or overdubs and overdubs, but it just, they did a really good job.
Yeah, just one big voice.
Just
right?
one big voice. And you can tell they've done a lot of effects to really give it that huge instead of doing overdubs and backing tracks. It's just, hey, I'm going to sing and we're going to do reverb, delays, and undertones and things like that. It sounds incredible.
Yeah. It going back to what you said earlier, you can really hear that there is an edge of saturation on that vocal. Oh wait, I didn't hear that before.
Yeah, I didn't
Did you?
No. Oh, wow.
I love you so, I'm your biggest fan. I saw your picture and it's the best, the finest in the land. Camera lights in action. And words you know so well.
So there's a edgy kind of almost clipping on the top end of the voice, but it doesn't really sound fuzzy.
It doesn't. I was going to say that it almost sounds more like an overdriven preamp than it does a distortion effect over top of it. It just sounds like whatever gear he's using is being almost pushed to the edge right before it begins to sound bad.
Right, yeah. It sounds like he's belting it out.
Exactly.
So I wonder if the mic is right there, beating up the mic a little bit too, or hitting like you say, hitting the preamp certainly would give you that result and not give you the real fuzziness, but give you that little bit of, I don't even want to say breakup. There's just that little bit of
just sort of edge. Exactly. Yeah. It just gives it that little edge to it.
Yeah,
really,
I love that almost reverse delay coming in before. That's kind of a cool effect. I like that. And now, so do we hear that in the mix?
Not really. I'm sure though headphones would definitely exaggerate that effect.
Right.
Those small subtleties, especially when you're this far from the speakers, can be a little bit harder to hear. But I'm sure in headphones it's probably clear as day. This those are sort of the effects that don't really jump out until your 10th, 12th, 20th time listening to the song.
Right.
When your ears sort of know what's going on, and then it's like, oh, I never heard that before. So yeah, it really is a cool effect.
Yeah. Really one of the things, like you were saying earlier, you'd only hear that in the mix of music, kind of a stem kind of environment or individual tracks or whatever. So, so what a cool thing. Any final thoughts on the mix or anything else that you hear jumping out at you?
Yeah, I really think they did an incredible job with the overall balance of the mix, using compression, effects to taste, automation, really. What jumped out is the last chorus. You can even see it in the WAV files, to where the WAV files just get bigger because now it's the final chorus. This is the most excitement. Overall, really great job. I mean, it doesn't hurt that the musicians are world class.
Yeah, and obviously there's a ton of energy there. They were going in the studio, right? Definitely recorded live. I mean, I wonder if there was a click or if they were just playing.
Just playing, yeah. It sounded great. I learned a few things here. I'm going to go back and try my best at some sort of distorted vocal tone without making it clip. I haven't used the technique of panning just the reverb to the right. I'm going to try that on my mixes and see how it turns out. I mean, that's the purpose of this website, is now I can go home and download this and see what I could have done or what I've done differently, which is incredible. Really incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Man, thanks so much for sitting down with me. This is really a lot of fun.
It was.
And man, I learned a lot. I mean, it's like you say, I'm going to go home and think about some of those little ear candy kind of things that are just in there that I'll probably listen to it on headphones and see what shows
jumps
up
out
that way too.
Absolutely.
Cool stuff, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right. And thank you for joining me here in Sweetwater Studio A. We've been checking out a multi-track version of a song from Greta Van Fleet from the Mix the Music site. Definitely go to mixthemusic.com, check it out. There's so many different songs there, all kinds of different genres, artists. You're sure to find some things that you know really well that are really interesting to hear the individual tracks. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it and you'll learn a lot as well. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.